The oppressor's depiction of the oppressed is never a true one. It's always negatively distorted to serve the oppressor's nefarious hidden agendas. This has remained a consistent fact throughout history and is especially still true now in regards to Black people living under white oppression. The white society sits upon a throne of lies that falsely exalts themselves and marginalizes the image and perception of Black people. I'm starting this video in an unlikely place, one that will initially puzzle many, but the connection will later become apparent. It begins with the marketing campaign used by the bottled water industry. It has been called the trick of the century. Do you remember years ago when visiting friends and family, whenever you requested water, they served you tap water? It was such a societal norm that we didn't give it a second thought. In fact, those who went out and purchased water were deemed as foolish. Nowadays, to the contrary, if you visit someone's home and you're offered tap water, most people will feel insulted. Bottled water is now such the norm that those who drink tap waters are now the ones perceived as being foolish. Where once it would have been unimaginable to see people running off every day to the stores and buying bottled waters, it has now become the norm. In fact, the sale of water has now surpassed soda as being the largest selling beverage in the U.S. That's according to a recent report by Research and Consulting Beverage Marketing Corporation. Most people believe that this change of societal norm is a natural occurrence, but it's not a natural occurrence. It was deliberately achieved through a media marketing campaign. The marketing campaign used for the bottled water industry has been called the trick of the century. Some of the media propaganda campaigns were disguised as public service announcement revealing the many impurities found in tap waters. Other propaganda campaigns were used to convince consumers that bottled water is a healthy alternative for soda, when in reality, it's actually an alternative for tap water. Greater sales of water means greater profit for companies because there is no expense accrued for the need of ingredients when selling water. All you have to do is put water in a bottle and place a label on it and sell it. Perhaps the greatest irony is that if people would invest in good Hume water filters, they could get the same quality of water at home. Furthermore, buying bottled water works against the goal of a health and eco-conscious consumer by contributing environmental degradation with all the plastic. It also causes people every year to spend $2,000 more than they would spend each year than drinking tap water. The reason for pointing out this marketing campaign by the bottled water industry is to demonstrate how the minds of millions of people can be shaped by the propaganda campaign that are fed into a society. It was media propaganda that got millions of people to drinking bottled water. The definition of values by which people operate is greatly influenced by the mainstream media. Because perceptions created by the media leads to non-deliberate, thoughtful decision-making or decisions below the level of consciousness. It has been called thinking without thinking, and it ultimately leads to unconscious similar behaviors. Therefore, those who control the mainstream media control the brainstem of a nation. The mindsets of millions of people aligns with the prevailing media propaganda that are repetitively fed into a society. This is why propaganda campaigns are so heavily used by the ruling class for controlling the masses and for steering society towards an implied objective. The marketing campaign used for the bottle industry has been called the trick of the century, as I've stated earlier. However, the greatest media marketing trick in world history is the one that propagates the myth of white racial superiority over Black people. As I've stated earlier, those who control the mainstream media control the collective conscience of the masses. Because white people control the mainstream media, they therefore control the collective conscience of the masses. They've exploited this immense position of power to propagate the myth of their racial superiority over Black people. And those who would respond by saying that, isn't it obvious, have been manipulated to do just that. The myth of white racial superiority over blacks has been deliberately, subliminally embedded into our collective consciousness by an elaborate racist perception management system. It's deployed like a massive media marketing campaign that constantly falsely exalts the white brand while falsely marginalizing the black brand. Perception management is a propaganda technique that involves altering the public perception of reality to suit the objective of the ruling class. It's a well-proven system that is an essential part of modern information warfare. This disclosed perception management system is designed to create and sustain societal norms and false assumptions within society that aids in maintaining white social dominance over black people. It directly influences hiring, firing, promotion, and even criminal sentencing practices in ways that aids in the preservation of white social dominance over black people. Because of this perception management system, your perception of reality is an elaborate white deception, and the collective self-esteem of whites has been falsely boasted at the expense of black people. Case, point, and proof. The hidden reality is that the largest recipient of welfare, largest benefactors of affirmative action, and the group that commits most crimes are in fact Caucasians. And most inventions that have revolutionized the world were in fact either invented by black people or directly inspired by early invention by black people. These things I just stated are easily to verify. All you have to do is research them. In the age of information, ignorance is now a choice. Your perception of reality is an elaborate white deception. This disclosed perception management system bends the perception of reality to serve the system of white supremacy. The distortion of reality is actually much more easily to achieve than most people realize. Public perception of reality is not shaped based upon facts nor reality. It's actually shaped by the narratives that are repetitively fed into a society. People literally function based upon the narratives that are repetitively and systematically fed into a society rather than what's actually true. Therefore, the basic tool required for the distortion of reality is to merely repetitively and systematically feed false narratives into a society. The public at large will then function based upon those narratives instead of the true reality. This is what white society has done. Because the white ruling class controls all the narrative that are fed in society, they literally owns the interpretation of reality. They've exploited this scenario to deploy an elaborate perception management system that distorts the perception of reality in ways that aids in maintaining their white social dominance over black people. Because of this perception management system, your perception has been distorted. Case, point, and proof. The majority of people now functions based upon the perception that most inventions that revolutionized the world were made by Caucasians. Moreover, most people believe that black people are the leeches of society that haven't invented much throughout history. It's perceived that black people are literally moving forward, riding the coattails upon the white society. This perception greatly aids in maintaining assumptions within the society that aids in maintaining white dominance over blacks. However, the true reality is the exact opposite from what so many people have been misled to believe. As I said earlier, the hidden truth is that in spite of cultural traumas wrought by the injustice of white racism and slavery, most inventions that have revolutionized the world were either in fact invented by black people or were directly inspired by early inventions by black people. The fact of the matter is, without black people, there would exist no internet, no cell phones. We wouldn't have cameras and microphones on our cell phones. We wouldn't have the accurate weather forecasting system. We wouldn't have the cataract laser removal scope. There'd be no emails, no GPS, no hearing aids, no touch-tone phones, no caller ID, no home security surveillance system, no motorized vehicle, no home game cartridge, no steam engines, no traffic lights, no working light bulbs, no elevators, no skyscrapers, no air conditioning, no modern color PC, no 3D movies, no central heating, no refrigerators, no helicopters, no washing machine, no lawnmowers, no dryers, no refrigerated trucks, no blood banks, no fiber optics, no nanotechnology, no female sanitary pads, no bathroom tissue holders, no pencil sharpening, etc., etc. Black people have in fact enriched nearly every aspect of the lives of every person on this planet through our inventions. When a well-packaged web of lies has been sold gradually to the masses over generations, the truth will seem utterly preposterous, and a speaker will appear to be a raving lunatic. A historical fact that has been withheld from our whitewashed history books is the fact that within 80 years following the abolishment of slavery, and in spite of receiving no reparation and wrought with the cultural traumas of their injustices of racism that continued following slavery, African Americans submitted 726 invention patent applications to the U.S. Patent Office. This isn't only extraordinary under these circumstances and so closely following slavery, but it also more than doubled the number of patents submitted by whites during the same period. This scenario of black people outperforming whites and producing revolutionizing inventions has never stopped. Quiet as it's kept, most inventions that revolutionize the world come from the minds of black people. The white society sits upon a throne of lies that exalts themselves and marginalizes black people. According to a white social scientist, truth is not important for controlling society. What's only important is what's perceived as being true in order to control a society. True power lies in only what's perceived as being true, because as I said before, people function based upon their perception of what's true rather than what's actually true. Therefore, creating the perception of white racial superiority over black people is all that's required for maintaining white dominance. It empowers the white society insurmountably. The truth of the matter is that white people invented the patent office and have always used it to steal the intellectual property rights from black people. In order for black inventors to get their inventions mass produced, they have to go before white companies. These companies acquires the right to these inventions and then places white faces in front of the technology. This scenario literally allows the white society to continue exploiting the intellectual genius of black people while maintaining the appearance that all technological advancements are coming from the minds of Caucasians. To further propagate the myth that whites are inherently superior to blacks, the white society has also miseducated millions to believe that Africans were illiterate and uncivilized before the Europeans invaded, and that therefore we have no significant history that predates the Europeans' invasion of Africa. However, this is totally untrue. The hidden reality is that long before the Europeans invaded Africa, it was Africans that civilized Europe. All of Greece's first scholars received their formal education in Africa. Africans introduced science, writing, math, and philosophy to Europeans. The world's oldest university, library, manuscript, encyclopedia, human prosthetic, mathematical tools, medical journal are all located in Africa. Africans invented the wheel, paper, the calendar, the concept of 24 hours in a day. Africans are the first to build in stone and the first to smelt metal. Africans also introduced hygiene practices to Caucasians, such as shaving, the use of toothpaste, perfume, fragrance oil, deodorant. Africans even introduced the daily bath to Europeans. Queen Elizabeth of Spain bragged that she only bathed twice in her whole lifetime. Queen Elizabeth I claimed that she was the cleanest woman of all of Europe for reportedly bathing once a year. This horrible hygiene practice in Europe discontinued once the Africans introduced the daily bath to Europeans. These facts are deliberately omitted from our history books, movies, and TV shows because they refute the myth of white racial superiority. As I've said before, the white society sits upon a throne of lies that falsely exalt themselves and falsely marginalizes black people. We must question our perception of reality when it's being exclusively controlled by history's most notoriously deceitful and most narcissistic group of people. Whenever such a described people control the perception of reality, they'll always distort it to falsely exalt themselves and to falsely marginalize us. It's the racist and narcissistic people they inherently are. It's the way they've always been, and it's the only way they know how to be. Because the true name assigned to this perception management system remains classified and is therefore unknown, many awakened black people that are aware of its existence have appropriately named it the Black People's Matrix. It's a series of false narratives that have been repetitively fed into a society that falsely exalts whites and falsely marginalizes black people. The public at large function based upon those false narratives rather than the true reality. The general population doesn't know what's happening, and it doesn't even know it doesn't know. Noam Chomsky said that. Through the monopoly over information, the white society has created a prison for our minds. I'm trying to free your mind, but I can only show you the door. You're the one that has to walk through it. One love and peace, brothers and sisters. It's time to wake up.